Hello and welcome to another small SvelteKit tutorial, and this time we want to look into how we can run our SvelteKit app in a Docker container. And first we have to actually make it able to build our SvelteKit project for Node.js. So what we can do now is add a dependency to our project, and this is SvelteKit and then adapter -node. So I'm going to install it also as a dev dependency. And then we can go to our svelte-config.js file here. And in the first line here, adapter gets imported from adapter auto. And we can just change this here to node after we installed it. And this basically allows us to build our project for Node.js. And we can check here if you generated your SvelteKit project with a default template. You get already this script here, build, that just calls vite build. And if I'm gonna execute it, we can see that we get a build folder here, and in this build folder is basically almost everything we need to run the project. So I can also then do node build index.js, and I can start our SvelteKit app from Node already. So you can also, if you only want to do it in Node, you can already work with that. But we want to do it in Docker. So we now need to create actually an image, a Docker image. So for that, do it manually. Gonna create a new Dockerfile, and this is basically our build plan to create a new image. And we're gonna here do is we first define a builder image. So we do a two-step build. First we create a small container that only builds our project, the thing that we did here manually now. And for that I'm gonna get the Node 18 Alpine container. 18 is currently the long-term release and long-term supported release, and Alpine is known to be a really small image type. So we don't need to get a bloated big image, we can work with Alpine. And so what we do in our builder, we basically in there, I always like to work in an app folder. So I create /app and in their data, because this project here is the one I also worked on for my SQLite tutorial with SvelteKit. So we have a data folder here, and it has a small SQLite file. I'm just gonna create a data folder. And what we do in this builder is first we actually need to copy everything in the app folder. So we just copy everything except, actually we can create a docker ignore file. So we actually don't copy anything, but everything except a few exceptions. First one is Node modules. We want to install it in there again because I'm here developing on a Mac, and some modules get installed for my Mac architecture, and in the Docker container it's a Linux architecture, so we have to reinstall it. And here SvelteKit is a small temp folder. We don't need the data in there. And the build, we want to build it ourselves. We don't need the build, already done here, and also included the .env. And after that, we have everything we need in the container. We go to our app folder and install our dependencies. I'm also going to create a new env file with an absolute path. So currently in my .env from my dev environment, I have a relative path, but let's do an absolute path because we are now our container setup, and gonna write it to the .env file. And in the end, we just call yarn build. And yeah, that's the build container done. So we now actually do the real container, again from the same image, Node 18 Alpine. And we can then again create an app directory. Then we copy the relevant files from our builder image. So I say from builder, and we first copy the actual build in there. And what we also need is the package JSON and our yarn.log. This is actually optional, but you could generate a new one if you install from package JSON. But now if we do this, we get exactly the same setup as our dev environment. And we copy these files to the app folder. And so what we still need to do is we need to install, and this time production. So how you should structure your package JSON is that you install dev dependencies for everything that that is not actually needed to run your app, but basically to develop it. So for example, SvelteKit itself, because Svelte builds our app for us, that's the build folder, we don't need the Svelte libraries anymore because they land, the necessary stuff lands in this build. What doesn't land in the build is our runtime dependencies, like we use bcrypt to hash our passwords or our SQLite library. These stuff you import in your backend, for example, you need to define as normal dependencies. And if we say here in a Dockerfile install production, we only install these dependencies. So we don't need the dev dependencies. We won't get them if we say -- production. After that, we clean the cache to make the image a little bit smaller. Then we say our work here is /app. And at last, we define a command that basically calls Node with the parameter build index.js. So basically, like we did here, Node build index.js, we just call the index file in the build folder. And that's already our Dockerfile. So we are now ready to actually start our or build our container. So what we do here is docker build -t, and you can call it however you want. You can also SvelteKit SQLite image or something. And Docker then goes ahead and starts building, or first, running the builder. Here you can see it's yarn build is currently executing. Then it's done, and now goes to our second or runner image and copying the files. Now it installs here the dependencies, and in a few seconds we should already be set and have our image ready. So how did I call my image? Okay, so if we want to run our container now, we can then do this by using the docker run command here. I'm gonna say detached, so it runs also in the background. It doesn't always be in the foreground. And also I say port 3000, bind it to 3000. That's the default port and it's free. You can also bind it to another one, but the inside port needs to be 3000. Then I'm gonna do a volume, or with the mount syntax here, bind, say source is my current directory, so I need to start it from this directory here, and /data, so I get the database mounted inside the container. This is really recommended as so when you change something in the app, the changes also get written to your file system, and you can safely delete the container and start a new one, and you don't lose any data. So always mount your data directories. Okay, this because I do it here for testing purposes, I also added --rm. So when I stop this container, it gets automatically removed. Give it a name, and here in the end I have to say which image I want to run. So let's see. I can also docker logs. That's the container name, and /follow. So it says listening. Great. And if I'm gonna find, here's the browser and refresh, I get my app here. and if I could change data and stuff, and it gets written back. So everything works fine. I will put a link to the run command and to the Dockerfile, to the GitHub in the comments. And thanks for tuning in. I hope this works great. If you have any feedback, make sure to leave it in the comments, and have a great day. Bye.